Koinonia Foster Homes, which is now Koinonia Family Services, was founded in 1982 by Miriam Golden. After being a foster parent for over 17 years, serving primarily teens through their probation system, she decided to share her knowledge and experience with other families so that more children and youth could find loving homes during a difficult time in their lives. Miriam did not have any official social work or psychology training, but what she did have was compassion and common sense. The videos you will be watching were filmed in the mid-'80s, long before science helped the foster care industry understand the impact and importance of trauma and emotional attachment for children who have suffered abuse, neglect, and/or molestation. In 2008, the PATH Wisconsin study had been tasked to see what practices were effective throughout the spectrum of the foster care system. Its published findings included the traits of successful foster parents. In the mid-1980s, Miriam was already teaching on 2/3 of those traits. Since 2000, there's been significant research and insights into the impact of trauma on children and their behaviors. Again, Miriam Golden was ahead of her time in helping foster parents understand that consistency in the home would lead to trust and a reduction of fear in children who had suffered abuse, bringing them to healing. Felt safety is one of the greatest elements of trauma-informed care for healing of children who have suffered trauma, and Miriam was addressing that as well. The PATH Wisconsin study proved that one trait of successful foster parents is providing well-defined structure. And in this video section, Miriam teaches about the importance of consistency and a well-defined structure. Although Miriam did not use the term felt safety, she did explain how a consistent, caring home would lead to a child having reduced fear and becoming able to trust. That can only occur in an environment where the child or youth has a sense of felt safety. We are pleased to share the insights and wise counsel of Koinonia's founder, Miriam Golden. The PATH Wisconsin study proved that one trait of successful foster parents is providing well-defined structure. And in this video section, Miriam teaches about the importance of consistency and a well-defined structure. Although Miriam did not use the term felt safety, she did explain how a consistent, caring home would lead to a child having reduced fear and becoming able to trust. That can only occur in an environment where the child or youth has a sense of felt safety. We are pleased to share the insights and wise counsel of Koinonia's founder, Miriam Golden.
And we're going to start with foster parents and their responsibility to the child. And how do we do this? Through strong structure and communicate love. I found out years ago, someone came, the county actually sent a man that was with a magazine that wanted to do an article on foster parents, and went to our county and said, who could I talk to about foster parenting? And they sent him to us because he said, you know, I think Miriam and Sam have the best track record as foster parents in the county. I thought, boy, what a great honor that was that they would choose us. And he came, and of course, I thought it was an honor until he started asking me the questions. And I thought, wait a minute, I don't know if I have the answers. And one of the questions he asked me was, what do you contribute your success to? Well, I had an obvious answer I wanted to give him, but I knew that wasn't what he was asking for. I said, well, I'm going to have to think about that. And after thinking about it for a little while, it really came to me. I really believe it's a balance of love and discipline, and keeping it in a balance. Hardest thing in the world we do is keeping it in a balance. We either love them too much, we call it love, but it really isn't. It's our fear of rejection. We give them everything they want because we want to make them happy, because we're afraid if we say no, they might reject us, you know. And so we say it's love, but either we spoil them or we go the other way, and we are too much of a disciplinarian, and we're too hard with our structure. We don't communicate the love, and then they get rebellious. So, you know, it's very hard to keep that. It's a balancing act to be a parent, to keep that in a balance, love and discipline. So that keeping in a balance, and I believe that's exactly is the answer to being a good parent, and as well as a foster parent. So my whole lesson is based upon strong structure and communicating love. And so we're going to talk about this morning the areas of how we can have strong structure and build that structure for our children where it's a safe place. And this afternoon we're going to talk about communicating love. So we get both of those in a balance, and I believe we're going to build strong children. So important. Why structure? Well, let's put it this way. Have you ever thought about the town you live in right now? If you pulled out all the stop signs, all the signals were gone, Do you ever think about what it would be to drive there? I mean, I can't even imagine it. That's exactly how our children have lived. They've had no stop signs and no signals. And so what's happened, they have just been, I keep visualizing them like in the middle of the ocean, just frailing, saying, where is land? Somebody, where is land? Trying to just stay afloat. The same way, there is no stop signs, is what's right or wrong, no structure. I mean, we all want to feel secure. We want that stop sign out there to make us feel secure to drive, right? They have none of that. That's why our children are so insecure. And that's what structure is going to provide for them for the first time, is some security. Also, I see it as building this house for our children. Okay, we build this house, and the walls are the structure we've set for the first time. Now, these children do not like structure. They've never had it. They've never had limits, and that's what we're doing. We're setting limits. They kick those walls. No way am I going to bed at 10 o'clock. I went to bed when I wanted to, when I was at home. Nobody ever told me I had to go to bed at 10 o'clock. And they start kicking, and then we have to give consequences, and etc. But the bottom line is they kick those walls until all of a sudden you find them quit reacting as much. You're going, I wonder what's happening. Well, they don't even realize what's happening. That wall, as long as you don't move the wall, it sets security. I mean, let's put it this way. Let's take that stop sign out there at the corner. I feel secure to go to that stop sign, stop, and go on. But let me, one morning, take it out, and the next morning it be there. I'd be very insecure what to do when I got to that corner. Is there going to be a stop sign? There's not going to be a stop sign, I'm not really sure what to do. How do I drive, The same thing with our children. That's why those walls cannot move. We can't one day say, this is the way it is. Next day, I don't want to be bothered with giving them consequence. I'm going to pretend I don't notice. And the wall moves. They get their way. That's what's going to happen if we don't build a strong structure, this little house we're building with them. And you'll find that less and less they react because they start feeling secure. Security sets in. That's the benefit of structure, is security. And that's what our children need to learn, is to feel secure. And that's what we want to provide for them through structure. Because they are really saying, somebody stop me. They want those limits. A benefit of structure is security in the home. So what is the benefit of structure? That's it, security in the home. All right. See, with leverage in the home, we have acceptance. I remember we talked a while ago about leverage. The fact they come and they're there for a little while and they start really enjoying it. They feel a little more secure now because you've set some limits for them. That gives you some leverage. That security gives you leverage. They care about being there now because, hey, this feels pretty good. I'm not sure why, but I kind of like it here. That's that security they're starting to feel. So with that leverage in the home, we have acceptance. So they accept the fact that they're going to submit to us, and they start caring. And that's so important. I want to talk about anger just real quickly here. Why? Why do they have this anger? Well, what is the base of anger? Do you know? Do you know anybody that has a temper? I mean, you don't have to tell me. But do you know anybody that has a temper? You want to know why they have a temper? Anger. The base of anger is fear. Coals of anger is fear. I am afraid I cannot handle this. Okay? So that's fear. Then beneath that, what are they afraid of? They're afraid of losing control. It's out of my control and I can't handle it, so I'm afraid. So the fear is the coals that ignites the fire, which is anger. See, the control is a real big issue for all of us. But when you as a child have had the control ripped right out from under you, and you've been sexually molested or physically abused or emotionally abused, you've had no control at all in your life from that abuse. You all of a sudden put up all these control issues around you. You're not going to let anybody else do that to you again. You see, so what happens is the fear takes over because they're afraid of what's going to happen, and they have no control over it. And that's through our role modeling. We have the wonderful opportunity to deal with that fear issue. You know how I had to deal with that, or we did with my husband and I? How we dealt with fear was we had to teach them why we weren't afraid. Because at this point, then trust can come in, and the fear can leave, which obviously takes away the anger. That's what it's all about. So if you know people that have anger problems, try to have understanding for them. They really are afraid. Something inside saying, I don't trust losing control in this area.
The PATH Wisconsin study found that successful foster parents are emotionally grounded and stable. In this video segment, Miriam shares practical tools for resource parents to remain emotionally grounded, even in stressful times.
Separating the child from the problem. This is the biggie. It's hard not to reject the person with the problem. To love the person and reject the problem. Or deal with the problem. Not even reject it, you really would deal with the problem. That's very difficult to do. I'm going to tell you about Kelly, one of the children we had in our home, a little girl, came in at 12 years old, left when she was 19, and came from the Bay Area. Now, when she came in, she came from a lot of abuse background. She came from a very well-to-do family financially. She had everything she ever wanted. She had never shopped anywhere but Joseph Magnon's, practically. And because her mother and her grandparents were very well off. But her mother was an alcoholic, and she abused her tremendously. And finally was taken out of the home, as she actually was a 602. She was on probation because she'd stolen a 99-cent bag of candy. That's what they made her award for. But you know, we're so thankful that happened because of the abuse going in the home. They probably could never approve the abuse, so they used that opportunity to get her into the system. Well, anyway, so she was placed in our home. Now, every place she'd been, but she had a problem. She'd been in a couple other foster homes very shortly before she came to ours. They always sent her back to the county when they had a problem with her because she did lie and she did steal. Two things that little Kelly did. In fact, she created her own survival system, which you have to have when you've been in that kind of abuse. So anyway, she came in our home, and the first day, she went off with my husband and our daughter, who was 4 years younger, Joy, and they went off, I think went to Kmart it was, and went, did some shopping and came back. And pretty soon, Kelly appeared with this hat that we'd never seen before. My husband said to her, Kelly, where'd you get that hat? I didn't see it in your clothing list of clothes that you brought in. And she said, oh yeah, it was there. No, Kelly, I checked in your clothing. It wasn't there. Oh yeah, you just didn't see it. So they went back and forth a little bit, and finally said, look, that was not there. I want to know, did you get that? We went to Kmart. Did you take that hat? And finally, she started crying and said, yeah, I guess I did. She said, you're going to make me go back to my county, are you? And my husband said, no. Why would I do that? You're just going to get a consequence, and we're going to teach you a new behavior. Huh? No, yes. We're not going to go back to your county. This is what's going to happen, though. I'm going to take you back to that store, and you're going to apologize to the manager for stealing this hat. You're going to give it back to him, and I'm going to take how much it cost out of your allowance. You're going to pay for it, but they're going to keep the hat. That's your consequence. Oh, is that all? No, you'd think that would horrify a child. But to her, I could handle that. That's better than going back to my county. You know? So she said, okay, I'll do it. And she did it. But that's separating the child from the problem. I like you, or I care about you, but I will teach you a new behavior. I will not reject the child with the behavior. You know, separating them. We don't reject the child, we deal with the problem. Again, separate the child from the problem. I do usually a little role play here on the tape recorder. Sam, are you aware of that? No, okay. I usually use one of my staff people. Don, you know it, right? You're going to come up? Okay, we usually do a little role play here to explain that this is really wonderful, that we can separate the child from the problem until that problem affects you. And then it's fair. I was probably a foster parent at this point, maybe 6, 7 years. And I got into a situation where my Kelly that I talked to you about, I had just gotten a new tape recorder because mine had broken. And at that time, this was like 15 years ago, and these were expensive. They were like $100, $125 just for an AM, FM little tape recorder. And it was very important to me because my parents live in Southern California, my in-laws are there, and we used to tape our letters back and forth. So all of my mail, I actually used my tape recorder for. That's how we recorded our letters. So I really missed it because I love hearing their voice and communicating through tape recorder, through a tape. So anyway, what happened was, mine had broken. I just bought a brand new one. And I mean, you know how it is when you have to save money for something special like that and it's not in the budget. It was like, hot dogs twice that week, the things you do to really cut corners. So this was important to me. I went through a lot to sacrifice for that money. So it really was important to me that tape recorder, that I just got a new one. I mean, I just got my first letter from my mother. I just played it. It was sitting on the table, plugged into the wall. And I walked out. I said, Kelly, I'm going to run to the store. I'll be right back. You go ahead and set the table.
Okay, sure.
So I read out, and I came back. And on the counter, I couldn't believe it. Here sits my brand new tape recorder with the handle broken off, the front broken off. Kelly, what happened to my tape recorder? I can't believe it. You know what I went through to get that tape recorder? You know how much I sacrificed? I just got it. I can't believe you did this to me. Why would you do this? I can't believe it.
It was an accident.
And I was crying. Thank you, Don. And I was crying and I was upset, and I just got probably even a little more upset than that. I ran to my bedroom, threw myself across the bed, and I just was brokenhearted because it was really important to me. I'd just gotten this tape recorder. And that little still small voice said to me, "And Miriam, how would you have handled this if it wasn't your tape recorder?" "Well, I'd probably given her a consequence and made her pay for getting it fixed." "Oh, yeah." And I knew. Did she do this to hurt you? No, I know she didn't do this to hurt me. She was just being a careless kid. So I had to go back in, and I had to go, "Kelly, please forgive Mom." I gave her a hug, and I apologized. I said, "Honey, Mom was so wrong. I was attacking you, not the problem." I said, "You didn't do that to hurt me." "No, Mom, I would have never done that to hurt you." And she started crying, and she said, "Please forgive me." I said, "Honey, it's my fault." I said, you were being careless. You shouldn't have been jumping. I bet you were jumping over the cord." She said, "Yeah." My foot caught on it, and she threw it off, and I hit against the wall. I said, "Yeah, it's kind of what I figured happened. So you need a consequence for being careless. You should have moved it." But I said, "It's wrong that you weren't trying to do that to hurt me, and I know that. And please forgive me for accusing you of trying to hurt me, because that wasn't true." And she says, "You're right. I would never do anything to hurt you, Mom. I really wouldn't knowingly." And so I said, "Please forgive." I forgive you. Now, why was it so important? And we could exchange some tears and some hugs, and everything was fine. But why was it so important that I apologized to her? You know why? Because I'm role modeling. If I can't apologize when I'm wrong to my children, they're never going to apologize to me. You see, because Mom and Dad are perfect in their children's eyes as they're growing up. They do everything right. You're their heroes. And bottom line is, if you can't apologize, then they can't. Do you know anybody who can never be wrong? Absolutely will die before they'll admit they're wrong? It's because they're afraid to apologize. I can't admit I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm bad. And if I'm bad, I'm rejected. It's okay for us. It's important that we role model to our children when we are wrong. It's so important that they understand that. It's okay to be wrong, and when you do, you apologize. That's the forgiveness thing coming back in. When we're wrong, we need to what? Ask forgiveness. That's all he's asking us to do. Same to your children. You need to role model that to your children. It's okay to be wrong. Otherwise, we're setting them up for failure, because they're going to be wrong sometimes. They need to know that they're just as good as when they're wrong as they are when they're right. It doesn't change their value. They're just forgiven. And they need to learn a new behavior. And sometimes there's consequences. Now, she got a consequence because she was careless. But I separated at that point, and I care about you, and we're going to teach you a new behavior through consequence. Communicating unconditional love. My care for you does not depend upon the way you treat me. My care for you does not depend upon the way you treat me. I'm going to love you, accept you, and forgive you when you're wrong. And that's what we want to do for them. I think there's one thing about unconditional love, that there's no tool against unconditional love. There's no tool against it. Probably one of the examples is Brenda, where I was asked to teach. In fact, I put this training together several years ago when they'd asked me to teach at a residential treatment facility that housed about 45 children up in the Auburn area by us here. And the Juvenile Justice Commission asked me if I would go and do a training because they were having a lot of problems there. Well, I did. And I remember my first day approaching that facility. It was so interesting. I was walking up to this training facility, for the training, and this young lady approached me. And this girl was probably about 16 years old. She had on black leather pants, a black jacket on, leather jacket, chains around her wrists, a chain hanging from her waist here. And I'm going, uh-huh. I said, hello? And she says, yes, my name is Brendan. What are you doing here? I said, well, I was asked by the board here for this facility to come and do a training. I said, for your teachers and for your staff. What? Do what? I said, to do a training. Train them to do what? I said, well, to be better child care workers. You got to be kidding. We don't need your help. Who do you think you are? I said, wait a minute. I was just asked to come here by the board. I said, you'll have to talk to them. Well, we don't need any help. We're doing fine around here. And she just kind of yelled at me all the way up to the door of this facility where I was going to do the training. I got to the door and I saw her go over to one of the child care workers, and she was standing there cussing him out. I mean, telling him off royal. What was I doing there, and who let me come on the property, and so on and so forth. So I got into a training room just about this size, about this many people sitting in a group. And first thing I said was to this particular child care worker, who she had just proceeded to cuss out, I said, by the way, what kind of consequence is that young lady going to get? I said, for her behavior. He looked at me and he went, he scooted way down. He says, I'm not doing nothing. I said, oh, really? I said, who is your boss? Who's your supervisor? He pointed to somebody on the other side. And I said, oh, you're the supervisor? And he said, yes. I says, what kind of consequence does he get for not giving her a consequence? And he looked at me and I got the same response. He said, I'm not doing nothing. I said, well, I think we better leave that one alone. And I moved on with the training. Well, I found out afterwards that she was having an affair with the program director. So that was the boss of all these people who no way were they going to interfere. This young lady had control of this place. Total control. 16-year-old running this place. Out of the Bay Area. Very hurting, abused, angry girl. Well, it turned out that a friend of mine at the time, Rhonda, was working there. And she was actually in her house, in the unit that they had 6-bed units, homes, and she was the house parent for that house. And so after the training that day, I said to Rhonda, I said, you know, my husband dropped me off, but he's going to pick me up in Auburn. Can you drive me down there? And she said, yeah, I can. Well, this Brenda hurt her. And she said, I want to go with you. And Rhonda looked at me like, no way. And I said, yeah, let her go. I don't care. That's fine. She can come with us. So she got in the car. Man, the minute we got out of that gate, she started in on me. I hate your guts. Who do you think you are, here trying to tell us how to run this place? I turned around the back seat. I said, you know what, Brenda? I love you. There's nothing you can say to me keep from caring about you. I think I said the words, I care about you. I said, you're so important. Oh, shut up. Turn around. Leave me alone. I said, Brenda, don't you understand? I said, you're the apple of God's eye. I said, every hair on your head is numbered. You're a very important person. I hate you. Shut up. Turn around. Leave me alone. And she went on, and she just let me have it. She used some words I never even heard before. And I'm telling you, I got an education. I just kept turning around and saying, Brenda. She said, turn around. Leave me. I said, no, Brenda. You're so important, honey. Don't you understand? I'm not going to stop caring about you. You're worth caring about. Well, she just kept yelling at me all the way down the hill. And I got out of the car. My husband met me, got over in the car, and she jumped up in the front seat. And my husband started to pull off. I said, no, wait a minute. And I said, just a minute. And I got out of the car and I leaned over the top of my car and I said, hey, Brenda. She said, what? I said, I love you. She was so angry. I said, honey, take off. I wanted the last word, you know. Anyway, and I said I loved her only because the word love was a foreign word to her. And I wanted to start explaining to her what love was about. And so the next week, when Rhonda went on shift, I gave her a box of candy. And I bought it and I put a little ribbon on it. And I said, take this to Brenda and tell her it's for me. So she took it to her and she set it on the television in their living room area. And she said, oh, she'll never take it. I said, well, take it anyway. She'll never take it from you. I said, go ahead, just take it out there and tell her it's for me. She set it there and she said 2 hours later, she looked at it, it was gone. And she said, I walked by her room and there it was sitting on her dresser and she had opened it and she was eating the candy. And so about 2 weeks later when she went on shift, I sent another gift. I can't remember what it was, but I sent her another little thing. I said to tell her this is from me. Well, one night she finally came in after that second time and she said to Rhonda, why does Miriam care about me? How could she care about me? She doesn't know all the horrible things I've done. And she says, Rhonda, why do you care about me? She says, honey, because you're worth caring about. And she started sharing God's love for her, and there's only one just like her, and how important she was. And she came to understanding of some of her worth for the first time in her life. There was a turnaround in this girl. I came out about, I guess 2 weeks after that. And at that point, they put me on the board of directors for this facility. And they had us come out for some big PR gesture they did there. And they had cookies and coffee on the lawn. They had all the different people in the community come and to see the place and so on. And so I got out of my car, and I'm walking across the lawn there where they had coffee set up. And here comes this girl running toward me. I'll never forget it. She had a brown skirt on, brown heels on, and a kind of a light-colored beige blouse, and she's just a very attractive young lady, and she's running across there. I'm trying to think real quick. It's probably one of the kids I met. I don't remember her name, and I was just trying to think, how you want to be able to say hello to so-and-so. Obviously, she knew me. She was coming so fast. She got up right in front of me, and I said, Brenda. I was shocked. It was Brenda. Total different presentation. Didn't even know her. She looked wonderful. And she put her arm around me and she greeted me. She said, "Oh, Miriam, come on. I'm so glad you got here." She said, "I want to get you some coffee." I said, "Sure." And I'm in shock all the way over there, And this girl turned around. All that turned her around was, "There's nothing you can say to keep me from caring about you. You are very important. You are worth something. There's only one just like you. You're unique." And when I was able to communicate that to her, and Rhonda was able to reinforce that, that turned that child around, a whole different person. Then she would call me from time to time and always greet me when I would call up there. Totally changed our relationship. So important for us to communicate to our kids. You're going to get confronting kids like that. And that's what we have to be able to separate the child from the problem. I love you, but I might not like what you do or what you say, but I love you. And that's what we're going to be doing and learning how to communicate unconditional love. Okay. Learning to respond rather than react. This is very important, that we learn to respond and not react. It's very hard to do in our personal relationships not to react. So how much more it is to this child coming into our home who's brand new, who's feeling much more threatened, much more insecure, that we not react to them. I had a girl in our home, and her name was Lorna, and she had come from a lot of abuse. And when she ran away before she had come to our home, her father was a biker, so she went into a situation where she knew her father had these friends, and there was 4 bikers that lived there, and they really abused her. And she basically was looking for me to react when she started telling the story. Did I ever tell you about? Now, when a child does that, they're doing that for one reason. They're looking for a reaction. Are you going to really care about me if I tell you these things that I did? And she started proceeding to tell me some really horrible things that had happened to her. But they're just so sure that if you really knew how bad they were, because they feel bad about themselves, if you knew how bad they were, you wouldn't want them there. So they'll test you and look for a reaction. I remember one little boy told one of our foster parents, "Did I tell you I ripped off our whole neighborhood before I came here?" "Oh, you did?" I was a little bit shocked and called our worker and said, "Is this in his history?" But they didn't react to him. They said, "Well, no, we didn't hear that, but it doesn't change how valuable you are. We want you here. You're important to us." And because they didn't react, it's like, whew, they still care about me. Maybe I am okay, Testing. Then you've got the children from 10 years old on up. Those children will tell you stories also, but like I say, like my Lorna that I'm talking about, most of the time they're true. And they're testing to say, if you knew all the negative things about me, would you still care? Would you still accept me and want me in your home? Moral commitment. We ask you to come be foster parents, and when you know you're here for the right reasons, because we will be able to pay you enough to meet the basic needs of that child. We talked about the financial covering we give you, but it's more important is the moral commitment. I am willing to commit myself to take in a child and be willing to stretch and to grow, to take somebody else's child in and love them like my own. And that's very difficult to do. A lot of people aren't willing to. And the fact that you're here today saying that you've made a moral commitment, and we appreciate you for that.
The Path Wisconsin study shows that successful foster parents are accepting and don't assume the success of the placement is totally up to the child. In this segment, Miriam shares those very concepts and gives examples of how a caring foster parent has compassion for a child and the impact that has for them.
All right, a child's responsibility to you from his point of view. Guess what? What do you think his responsibility to you is from his point of view? That's it. 0. He has none. In fact, it's the reverse. He's usually come from a home, most likely from alcoholism, broken, etc. You must prove yourself to him rather than the reverse. Why should he trust your love? Until now, someone has used his love as leverage for themselves. Let me give you a couple of examples of children who come into our home, into Koinonia, actually, into our homes. I remember one little boy saying that, my mother, she just kept telling me, if you really love me, you'll go out and get some money because we have no food. You'll go out and panhandle. So he'd go actually out on the street and panhandle money to bring in. But he says, Miriam, when I brought the money to my mom, she never bought food. She always bought booze. You see? So why should he trust our love? You see, if their love has been used, and love to him was a scary word. You know, and many of our children have their parents have. I have one little gal that was in our program, and her mother's a prostitute in Sacramento. Every time she went home on the weekends, her mother would use her to prostitute. She'd say, if you really love me, you'll go out and help me make money, because I can hardly make it. I can hardly make ends meet. I don't have enough money to pay my rent. And so she'd go sell her body, because her mother says, if you love me, you will do this. Well, if that's what they think love is not a very good word in their vocabulary. In fact, we very rarely ever said to our children when they came into our home, I love you. What we always said to them is, I care about you. We cared about them because it's non-threatening. The word love, they don't really understand. That's a very threatening word to them. In fact, their first thought is, what do you want out of me? What do you want from me? That's what they're thinking when you say, I love you. So we have to make sure that we role model love, caring and selfishly, because that's not something they're going to do automatically, is believe what you believe the word love is. So I care about you is much more acceptable, I think, until they understand. So therefore, we have to role model by how we treat them and being consistent. I had another girl in our home, her name was Denise. She came to us about 2 months before she turned 18 and was going to go into emancipation program. Now, she didn't expect to buy into her home because it's like, hey, I have to be here until I turn 18. I don't really need you folks, but I just got to do it because the law says I have to. So I didn't expect her to really get too involved emotionally with us. But you know what? The second month she was there, I could always tell the testing started. Have I ever told you? Because at that point she started caring about us, and she wanted us to care about her. So she started sharing with me. She said, did I tell you what I did in San Francisco before I came here? I said, no, you didn't, Denise. She says, well, I work for a pimp. I said, oh, you did? And I know she was watching every response I gave her. I said, oh, you did? And she said, yes. She said, but I wasn't a prostitute. I said, well, what did you do? She said, well, I stole from all the major department stores. Because the pimp I worked for, he was the one he sold the clothes to the high-paid prostitutes in San Francisco. So we went and stole the clothes. And so we always went out in two, and two of us together. And she said, I said, oh, you did? And she says, yeah. And I says, we went to the major department stores like Joseph Magnon's, Liberty House. I said, well, how did you get away with it? You know, and she said, well, what we did is we just wore panty girdles. We went in and we always took two dresses in at a time, and we took one and we'd roll it up around a hanger, because you can't leave the hanger. Now I can say some of this stuff was shocking me a little. I had never heard it before. I'm going, oh, I want to go, really? You know, but I didn't do that. I said, oh, really? You know, and not reacting but responding anyway. And she explained to me how they shoved these clothes down in their panty girdle. You know, but the sad thing was, and then she proceeded to take, and she lifted up her dress and she showed me up the insides of her legs, and she had scars, horrible scars, where those hangers had gouged into her skin, and she'd go back just bleeding down her legs for the pain. I mean, the scars of that for the rest of her life. You know, and that was very painful to her. But she said that finally she got caught, and once you're caught, they get your photograph, and they put it in all the stores, so your career's over. She said, well, I went back, and the pimp I was working with told me that then I had to become a prostitute. And I said, no way, and I ran. And that's how I came back to the county. I said, isn't it wonderful, Denise? You don't have to do this anymore, honey. You have choices in life. And so as we respond to them, it reaffirms them that they're okay and they can make choices. They can be loved, and they are worth something. So important that we do not react, but that we respond to our children. Practical application. Love is patient, love is kind, love suffers long. Those are the 3 ways we're going to apply this now. Practically applying love is patient, love is kind, and love suffers long. 3 ways to apply this. Okay, how is love is patient? Well, my husband says that Matt, a young man we had in our home, who had come into our home with a learning disability. We got him through special ed, and he was getting into some normal classes now. But there's a little bit of a deficit there that he had a problem with. And we worked with him on that, and he'd grown tremendously. But there was one area that he struggled with. And what he struggled with sometimes was remembering certain things. And he was on kitchen help. That was his job, or his chore for that time. And it was like every 3 weeks they rotated. When he was on kitchen help, he always would forget. You know that little basket in the sink that the garbage collects and you dump it over in the garbage disposal? Okay. Well, he would do that. He'd take it out and dump it here, but he always set it up on the counter. When you got 10 people in the house, and that is not being protected, you got plumbing bills, let me tell you. So my husband would say to him, Matt, you didn't put the stopper in the sink. Or if I would walk through, I'd be yelling at Matt. Well, this went on for several months. Finally, my husband said to him, Matt, if you do not remember to put that stopper in the sink, you're getting a consequence. How about 30 days restriction? Ooh, that seemed pretty heavy. So my husband said, I'll guarantee you won't do that anymore. Well, sure enough, next time he was on kitchen help, exactly what he did. Forgot, 30 days restriction. He didn't even argue about it because he knew he was already told. So he didn't say a word. He served his 30 days. My husband turned to me and said, I bet you it doesn't happen anymore. I said, I hope not. Well, guess what happened? First time he was on kitchen help. There it was, sitting right up there on the ledge. It did not get put back in the sink. And my husband and I sat down and we talked about it. I said, honey, I know he's not doing this on purpose. It seemed like there's an area there he's just having a struggle with. Just because John, who was in our home right then, and Jeff and other young men were there, they could remember. You can't compare your children. They all have different levels of ability. And so don't say because this one can do it, he should be able to. This was an area that was really a struggle for him. And we have to accept him where he's at. And if we want to love Matt, we're going to love him right where he's at. And we need to accept the fact he really can't remember. For some reason, he just can't remember to do this. So we are going to tell him and remind him because we care. Accept him with his ability to function, you know? So from that day forward, and that might seem a lot to you, but my husband, for 2.5 years that Matt was with us till he turned 18, or almost 19, he would say to Matt, every time he was on kitchen help, he'd say, Matt, you forgot to put the stopper in the sink, you know? And for 2.5 years doing that, you learn patience. That's what my husband said. I learned patience. It's kind of like what we talked about earlier, about the brushing the teeth. Same type of thing, where you have to remind, and that takes patience. And that's part of communicating you care. Practically applying that you care. Love is patient. Love is kind. Okay? How are we kind to our children? Had a girl in our home, her name was Dina. Dina's mother was an alcoholic. Every Saturday, that's a little bit of an overstatement. Probably very frequently, I'll put it this way, on Saturday mornings, she would show up at our door and want to come in and see Dina. And she was always coming off a drunk. And so she would get there and I'd say, well, sure, come on in. Now, how could I say no to her mother? If I loved Dina, Dina would never believe we cared about her if I couldn't care about her mother. Because her mother was very special to her. It was very important to her. So her mother would come in and sit at the table, and she would say, I loved her, I love her, I born her, nobody can take her away from me. I mean, I heard that over and over and over. You know, because she did. But we did this, and I, just kept loving her until about a couple hours. I'd let her just sit there and talk, and then I'd call her father, who lived not too far away. He'd come and pick her up. But how are you going to care about these children? How are you going to show that your kindness? Sometimes they're going to have people in their lives that are not easy to deal with. In other words, water seeks its own level. And if our children come in with poor self-esteem, guess who they find for friends at school? People that have other children have low self-esteem just like they do. So you're going to look at this kid and say, that kid's had all kinds of problems. I don't want him running around with him. But you see, you have to understand something here. Who was the most important people in your life when you were in high school? Let's just take it right there. Or in school, period. Who was important to you? Your friends, exactly. Your friends were the most important people. These children look at it the same way. So you have to say, look, I don't really feel good about this relationship. I don't think he's a good positive reinforcement for our foster son or daughter, whatever it might be. But you can say, this is where love is kind. Rather than you going over to Johnny's house at the beginning of the night, let's say that your foster son is named Joe. Joey, rather than you go to Johnny's, why don't you invite Johnny to come and spend the night at our house? Our family's going to go on a picnic Sunday. Why don't you invite Johnny to come to our picnic, And when they ask you, what you do is you give them structured supervision with that child, rather than say, I don't want this child in this house, or I don't want to have them around you. You can't do that. But you can limit how much they see them, and you can give them structured supervision. That's so important to accept their friends, you see, because their friends are the most valuable people in the world to them. And you'll find as they grow in their self-esteem, they change their friends. Their friends kind of change as they grow to where they're at. So it's a growing proposition for them. But love is kind, and that's being kind to their friends. Love suffers long. Long suffering. And you'll see this in a role play that we talk about. When a child has a consequence, who else suffers? Who's going to stay home to see they follow through, right? So we have long suffering involved. Probably one of the things that's most direct, it's so easy sometimes to just say, I know they have a problem, but you know, I really don't want to pretend like I notice because I don't want to deal with it, you know? We have to notice. That's where love suffers long. John come in one day, and he had a $5 bill, and I said, John, where'd you get that $5 bill? I thought your allowance was all gone. Oh, I sold my pocket knife to Joe at school. I said, oh, you did? Yeah. Well, I knew good and well he didn't. Now, I could have just ignored that and said, I know he didn't sell it, but I'm not going to worry about it. I've got too much other things to do right now. I'm not going to deal with it. Or I can take the time to get in the car and go down to the school and find Joe and say, Joe, did you sell your pocket, did John sell you his pocket knife? Joe said, yeah, he did. I said, how much did he sell it to you for? How much did he say? I said, I'm not telling. I said, basically, he didn't really sell it to you, did he? No, I guess he didn't, did he? So then I go back to them and I can say, John, I went and talked to Joe. You lied to me. You did not sell your pocket knife to him. Where did you get the $5? I never confront a child and tell him he's lying unless I've got proof. Because all you can do is build more walls between you and the child. They already feel entrusted, even though you know they did it. It doesn't change the fact we do not confront them unless we got evidence. It doesn't do any good. It just builds walls. So then you can confront them. But you know, the time it takes to just follow something through, to find out the truth, to confront them, to teach them a new behavior is long suffering. You can ignore a lot of these things and never deal with them just because you don't want to take the time. So that's where love is long suffering, okay? We must seek to love rather than to be loved. Expect nothing in return. It is by giving that we receive. We must seek to love rather than be loved. That is so difficult because it's so unselfish. And by nature, we're a little bit selfish, I think all of us. That's something that's kind of born in us, that natural part of us, the human part of us, that we tend to want to be loved rather than to love sometimes. And it's so important that with our children, we must seek to love rather than be loved. That's applying the real love that they need.
The Path Wisconsin study also stressed the importance of a foster parent being able to show empathy to the child with whom they are working. In this video segment, Miriam addresses the need for empathy for a child, as shown through patience, staying out of judgment, and forgiveness.
Their care has been twisted. Okay, you start from zero. They must unlearn bad habits that they have taken 14, sometimes, and 15 years to learn. Now let me tell you what's difficult. And that takes, wait a minute, patience. Patience is a big word in foster parenting. In natural parenting, actually, it takes a lot of patience. When you have this child standing in front of you who's 14 years old, which we had a boy in our home that has never brushed his teeth, and you say, here, I'm going to give you a toothbrush, and here's toothpaste, and this is how you do it. You think at 14 I can tell him one time, and now he knows to brush his teeth, right? Wrong. How long did it take you to learn how to brush your teeth? Think about it. I know my mother until at least I was 9 or 10 years old. Every day of my life as I was walking out that door, Miriam, did you brush your teeth? Did you brush your teeth? I know she said that to me every day of my life. Well, if it took me 9 or 10 years to learn to brush my teeth, and I started probably at 3 and 4 years old, just because this child is 14 years old, because you see, it's a learned behavior, doesn't mean he's going to learn because he's 14 years old. This is where the patience come in as foster parenting. Don't assume they know anything. You, every day, for 2.5 years, that boy was in our home. Every day I had to say, did you brush your teeth? As he's walking out the door, did you brush your teeth? And still said it to the day he left. Because he was learning a new behavior. He'd never been taught. One of my favorite stories about assuming these children know things that they don't know. I have a good one. We had, it was actually in the other side of Sacramento, anyway, in that area. Trying to think of where it is. Elk Grove. It was in Elk Grove. We had a family there and had a little girl in her home. And she was 12 years old, and she was never allowed to cook. She was never allowed to go in the kitchen with her natural mom. So when she got in this foster home, oh, wow, she just loved it because she let her help her cook. She made her first pies with her, first time in her whole life. She made lemon meringue pies. And they had company over that Sunday, and the afternoon they were sitting around the table, and they were talking, and they weren't quite ready for dessert. But I remember her foster mom said to me, she kept opening the door and saying, can I serve the dessert? Her mom could say, just wait a minute, wait a minute. Finally, I got so tired of her opening the door, I said, yes, serve the dessert. So anyway, she was so excited about serving this lemon meringue pie, her first pie she'd ever made. So she cut the pie, she brought it in on 2 plates. One had the filling, and one had the meringue. Now, you would assume she would know how to serve lemon meringue, but she didn't. She had never done this in her life before. It was kind of cute in a way because she didn't know. She thought that was so pretty that should be on a separate plate, you know, that meringue. So you don't assume that they know anything, okay? Don't assume. You don't know what training they've had. Some of them had a lot of training in areas. Some of them had none. So we have to be patient. And that's where patience come in as a foster parent. We've got to be patient and teach them behaviors that we could assume that they already know that they don't know. Don't assume anything. Take time to walk through it, make sure they understand and help them learn. And sometimes where the patient comes in is that child is older and we want to assume they should know, and if we tell them once, that's the end. It's not necessarily true. It takes time to train, okay? See, we only hold anger toward people because that's how we judge them. I'll keep you away. At this point, I am giving you a sentence. I'm sentencing you right now that no longer I'm going to be a friend of yours, or I'm not going to allow you in my life in any way. That's what we do when we judge and when we do not forgive. You can do this to our children. That's why I'm telling you it's so important, is because our children know. They know if you're angry with them and you haven't forgiven them. And we show that in many different ways in our behavior. You can pretend like it's not bothering you, but you know, we all are very transparent when we're angry because our attitude changes toward people when we're angry with them. And they sense that. So it's very important that you're able to forgive on a daily basis to your children when they don't meet. Oh, I never knew this child was going to this or that. And all the way, if we allow ourselves to become resentful toward them and don't forgive them, then they know that, and then it makes us ineffective working with that person or that child. Real important that we understand this wonderful gift we have, and we can stay vulnerable, forgive them, and love and accept them just the way they are, and forgive them when they don't meet up to our expectations. We keep that channel open between us and that child that we can continue to work with them. But the minute we decide to not forgive them and our attitude changes, they're gonna back off. They're gonna shut down. They're gonna say, no way, these people don't want me here. They don't really care about me. And that's only going to happen by our behavior. And sometimes it's not easy. We have to die to ourselves by saying, I don't care if they did it, it was wrong. Because I go to these children, you know, they can't heal my hurt when they hurt me. Only one person can heal my hurt. So they're not responsible for that. They're responsible for their behavior, and if it's wrong, they need a consequence. But me holding them in judgment is not a part of that consequence that we should give them. We have to give them a proper consequence and continue to love them. Okay? Forgiveness is a very important ingredient in taking care of our children.
And finally, the PATH Wisconsin study indicated that successful foster parents state that they like children. Although Miriam does not state it that way, in this video segment she makes it clear that it is important to be the child's friend and support and to show unconditional love.
Be their friend. So important for us to be their friend. I had a boy in our home, his name was Steve. And Steve, he'd probably been in, 15, 16 foster homes, I think he said, when he came to us. And he's what I would call a system kid. And he was 16 years old when we got him. Hurting young man. Probably had the worst self-image of any child I'd ever seen. And when he came in, he just, he always felt like he wasn't trusted. He didn't feel obviously loved. And so I could see this. He's so much pain in Steve. But he was there for a couple of months, and but he had a nice attitude. He really did. He was probably better behaved than some of the children we'd had, but it really hurt him. And one day he walked in from school, and it was probably right around noon, I think. And I said, "What are you doing home, Steve?" He said, "Well, I just got suspended." I said, "What did you do?" He said, "I cussed out the teacher." I said, "Why did you do that, Steve?" He said, "He cussed at me first." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "That's interesting." I said, "He's your role model." I said, "They aren't supposed to be cussing at you. That's not allowed at that school." He said, "Well, they did, and they kicked me out." I said, "Well, you know what? I want you to get in the car right now. We're going right back to that school. I said, and we're going to talk to them. I said, because he needs a consequence for his behavior. I said, they kicked you out, inappropriate. You believe me? I said, well, of course I believe you. Why wouldn't I believe you? I don't know, just nobody ever believes me. I said, yes, Steve, I believe you. I said, you go get in the car. Now, I have to say that I'd already thought, for any of that little still small voice says to me, what if he isn't telling the truth, you know? But you know what? I knew this, that between here and the school, from home and the school, that if it wasn't the truth, that story would change, right? So the story didn't change. She's still true to her story. So we drove right up to that school, walked in, I asked for the vice principal, and his name was Al Fry, and I said, Mr. Fry, I need to see you. And he said, fine, come into my office, and we did. I told him what had happened and what Steve had said. He says, you're absolutely right, Mrs. Golden. That was totally inappropriate. Steve had, there's no reason why that teacher, if that happened, he had no right to suspend Steve from school. He said, let me go talk to the teacher. So he went and talked to the teacher. Well, here the teacher comes back with him. He walks into the office, and he said, poor man, he was bright red. He was so embarrassed. He said, I am so embarrassed. His first words he said, I feel so bad. I had no right really to suspend Steve. But he said, I have to explain, Mrs. Golden. He says, this is a printing class. I got a brand new piece of equipment. And he says, Steve was the first one to use it. I said, he first time he used it, and he pulled down some type of handle. Anyway, he jammed the machine. I was so upset. It was the first time to be used. He said, I turned around and I swore at him. And he says, and he swore back, so that became, they really got into a confrontation. He said, that's why I suspended him. But you're right, I was just as wrong as he was. He says, can I apologize to you and to Steve? And he did. And he said to Steve, he said, will you forgive me? I said, yeah, Steve, and your response was inappropriate, right? He said, right. He said, so he apologized back. Well, guess what? Steve got to go back into school. Now, all those 30 kids in that class saw him get kicked out, right? 45 minutes later, Steve is back walking on campus. I mean, he was walking tall. You know, man, to be right. You know, that was so important. You know what? But I was Steve's friend. I was more than foster mom now. I was his friend. I believed in him. We have to believe in our children. Our children have not been believed in. And you give them that opportunity for the first time to be believed in. And it's really important to believe in them. Okay? Be their friend. We always try to fight what was right for them. Always stand by them. As I said before, when they come, they don't obviously care about anything. You see, we're talking about children with broken spirits, poor self-image. They have been convinced by the way the world has treated them that they aren't worth anything. And having a job to restore that self-esteem and know who they are is a big job. But it really comes to that consistency. I told you, of structure and communicating love. Those are the ways they come to know that they're okay. They are worth something. They're worth more than something. They're worth, well, I tell them, you're the apple of God's eye. You're so important that every hair on your head is numbered. That's how important you are. Unconditional love. What is unconditional love? Unconditional love is acceptance and forgiveness. So what is unconditional love? Everybody. That's it, exactly. That sounds real easy. Another one of those difficult things. I accept you just the way you are, with all your problems when you come into my home, and I forgive you when you don't live up to my expectation. Now, we find that difficult to do with the people that we love, our own loved ones, husband, wife, children, and so on, family. We have a hard time sometimes forgiving them when they don't live up to our expectation. And I want to talk a little bit about forgiveness. Let me tell you why. This is a key ingredient in parenting and in relationships, is forgiveness. Why are you saying, what's that have to do with being a foster parent? Let me tell you, if we are unable to forgive our children when they hurt us, when they lie to us, they deceive us, they do anything that we feel in some way that we're rejected by that child, if we can't forgive that, our foster parenting days will be very short. Forgiveness is a key factor in being a foster parent. What a great privilege we have to be able to release somebody from our judgment. What a wonderful gift.